Today is January 16th, 2021. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Stephen Mahone.
Well, my name is Stephen Mahone. I have lived in Colorado Springs for 40 years. I came here after I got out of the Navy. Went to college at the University of Colorado. I got a degree in engineering, and I've met my best friend, who turned out to be my wife for the past 35 years. We have two incredible kids who are also my best friends. I am a free thinker, I am a humanist, and I am an atheist, which really just means that I have an absence and a belief in God or gods. So that is the worldview presentation that I have been asked to pass on to you guys today. I am thankful for TCA to invite me again for another year. I have been doing this presentation since 2002. Not all of them have been here at TCA, but throughout District 20 and some in the District 3, I think. But it's always informative to me. I learn as much from these presentations as I hope that you guys will as well. So let's get started.
Most people believe in God. Why not you, Stephen?
Well, that's a good question. But also, the first thing that I ask is, what do you mean by God? I mean, that definitely means different things to different people. And the definition that I hear most often is that God is the all-knowing, the omniscient, the omnipotent, all-powerful, sovereign ruler of the universe that is outside of space and outside of time. And even though that question, that sentence, is syntactically correct and the noun follows the verb correctly, I sincerely do not know what it means. And I believe that if you gave it some thought, you would have a difficult time making sense of it yourself. If something is outside of space and outside of time, then how is it that it could even interact with us? Because we are constrained by space and time. We are part of the natural. If something is omnipotent, then that means it's all-knowing. That means that everything that can be known and everything that will be known is already within the privy of this being. And I find that to be a difficult concept to come to terms with, because if there is such a being that exists, then what is it, what is it that I can't see where my free will or any actions that I would take could have any effect on all of the universe as it unfolds. If something is all powerful, then how can any power be left over for any of us or anything else in the universe? So you have to be careful with that definition, even though it is in line with what a lot of people have been told and what a lot of people think. To me, that's very problematic, and it boxes us into a corner that we have a difficult time then rectifying the world and all of the knowledge that we were able to gain and understand, simply because we're tied down with these concepts that in my estimation really don't make a whole lot of sense.
But considering the consequences of not believing, the whole concept of fire and brimstone type of hell concept, why not believe? What's to lose?
That's often referred to or often talked about as Pascal's wager. Blaise Pascal was a mathematician, I think in the 18th century, and he posed the question, believing risks nothing and not believing risks everything. And I think that's a false dichotomy. I think that there's much more to such a question than just the simple answer that a lot of people think that they have to give. For instance, there are hundreds thousands of gods out there that people believe in. And there's one simple truth that you have to understand. It is logically not possible for all of these gods to be simultaneously true. But it is possible. In fact, I think quite likely that none of them are true. So what if you choose the wrong God to believe in? That's quite a risk, especially when you consider the thousands that you have to choose from. And then you have to tie down to believing in something for an entire lifetime. What if these 80, 90 years that most of us get? Well, can you imagine spending all of that time believing in something that not only isn't true, but can't possibly be true? I mean, that's a whole lifetime that could have been spent doing other things that could have helped aid all of us, could have assisted all of us. So, to choose between believing or not believing, it's not that simple. And I think that all of you probably realize that. I mean, there are consequences to believing in things that can't be true. It was Thomas Paine, one of our founding fathers, who said, "I pity the man who cannot change his mind, for he is nothing more than a slave to his own opinion." Please do not be afraid to change your mind should the evidence point you in a different direction. That is our strength. That is where we can really make changes, not only in our lives, but in the lives of others. And to me, that's far more important than worrying about a possible God out there that is keeping score for a game that just doesn't make any sense.
So if you're not fearful, and that does not make you believe in a God, what about morality? How do you know right from wrong?
What is right and what is wrong is precisely what I say it is. But it's also what you say it is, and what your teacher says it is, and what that street vendor in Jakarta says it is, and what an Aborigine in Australia says it is. I mean, if you just take a moment to think about it, let's assume for 1 second that there is an all-knowing, all-powerful being out there, and they have made a decision on what is absolutely right and absolutely wrong. If that is true, I don't know what that is, and you don't know what that is, and nobody else knows what that is. So how does that help us anyway? Because we end up bickering and arguing about it. So what is it that we do share? We share a common experience as human beings. We share the understanding that we're all part of this world and of this universe, no less. And we have to take it on for what it is. And a lot of people will immediately come out and say, well, you're just a moral relativist. Whatever, you can just do whatever you want. You're not concerned of the consequences, and you're what's to stop you from going out and raping and pillaging and stealing? Well, maybe I do think that those things are right. The problem is that most others are not going to think that it's right, and I'm not going to get very far. You are going to stop me, and we are going to have an agreement for the most part on the things that are good and the things that are not good. I mean, in general, anything that contributes to human suffering is not good. There are the occasional circumstances where, we do have to contain people, or we do have to put people in prison. Sometimes we even put people to death. But we don't just do that because it makes us feel good. We do that only in circumstances where we've come to an agreement that these people, or these, in the case of war, we have to take a stand, and we have to stop these things. But I don't think it's as difficult as a lot of people make it out to be. And to put the onus or the responsibility on some supernatural being that none of us agree about in the first place, I think is just pushing the whole issue down the road. We have to decide what is good, and we have to decide what is bad or what is not good. And for the most part, we're going to get it right. And when we don't get it right, like I said before, we have to have the courage to change our minds and to listen to other ideas. When I was growing up, the idea of same-sex marriage, or the idea, of two people of the same sex romantically involved, that was something that was so taboo and so off limits. And today, just 40 years later, 45 years later, think of how we have changed as a society. Think of how we have changed as individuals. These are things that we have to consider. I mean, it was only 100 years ago that women could not vote. There were a large number of people that thought that it was wrong or it was immoral for women to have the right to vote. Think of the different attitude and the different perception that we have of that today. It would be just the opposite. It would be immoral to deny women the right to vote, or people of color the opportunity to own land. Think of all of the things that have changed just in the last century. Think of all the changes that will be occurring in the centuries to come. These are things that give us strength. It's not a sign of weakness.
So you don't have to be, fear and morality are not in the equation of believing in a God. So surely there's a designer. How can our existence be explained by chance alone?
Well, our existence is a scientific question, and it also delves into the area of philosophy as well. What we thought was the explanation for how we got here hundreds of years ago is quite a bit different than it is today. Because we have made discoveries, and we have gone out into the natural world, and we have gathered evidence. For instance, we know that the universe is 13.8 billion years since the expansion started, the Big Bang. We know that the Earth formed 4.5 billion years ago from the accretion of dust and star stuff, and the Earth. The natural explanation for all of this is that we were just the right distance from the sun, and we formed a moon that allowed us, to have a stable orbit and generated seasons. But it was not always the case that the Earth was compatible with our existence. So to claim that an intelligent designer designed it just for us is to ignore all of the evidence that we have that tells us that was not always the situation. We evolved and adapted to the Earth. The Earth was never built for us to begin with. If you were to just randomly be transported somewhere in the universe, it's 99.99999% probability that your existence would be snuffed out in just mere moments. The universe is incredibly indifferent to us. It's incredibly hostile to our existence. So if you're going to claim that an intelligent designer built all of this just for us, then you have to explain why it is that virtually the rest of the universe is completely hostile to us. You have to look at the evidence in our past history of the planet. It's only been in the last few 100 million years that it was even compatible, for us to live here. There was not enough oxygen in the past. The volcanic activity on numerous occasions caused mass extinction on the planet, where numerous life forms were wiped out. And all of this has come back, and somewhat by chance, but chance in the sense that only in the circumstance that we have changed, or we have evolved to adapt to the environment. And when you put all of that together, what it tells us is that we're nothing special, only in the sense that the earth and the universe were not made for us. However, we have achieved consciousness. So now we are contemplating the universe itself. So in an offhanded way, we are extremely special because we know of no other entity out there that is contemplating its place in the universe and the universe itself. And that is a very profound and a very important responsibility that falls on each and every one of us.
So, if there is no God, we don't need to be fearful of one. We govern ourselves by our own morality. We can depend on science, what it can bring to our lives, and moving forward with having open minds with science. Well, are we alone? There's no God, or are we alone? Is there life elsewhere in the galaxy?
Well, the only honest answer that we can give to that right now is that we don't know. But we know from the spectral analysis of distant solar systems and different stars, we know that the physics and the science that govern us is precisely the same physics and chemistry that governs those other star systems. So there certainly is nothing precluding the existence of other life, and the possibility also exists that there are other intelligences out there. But we don't know. It's possible. It's called the Fermi paradox. If there are so many other intelligent civilizations out there, where are they? I mean, just by chance we should have been able to pick up their signals by now, or they would have been able to travel here by now. Considering the age of the universe, there are star systems that are much older than us. So you would think that those civilizations would have advanced in technology far beyond us. And that may very well be true. But perhaps they haven't survived long enough in order to make it here. They haven't survived long enough to get their signals to come to us. We simply don't know. But it is an enormously exciting and intriguing possibility. And there is nothing that precludes it from being true, but we don't know. The chances that, flying saucers have come here and we've been visited in the past is probably very, very remote, to say the least. But we're building new telescopes. Our technology continues to advance. We're going to be able to examine the atmospheres of exoplanets very soon with the James Webb Telescope that's going to come online here in the next few years. I'm not hopeful that in my lifetime we will make that discovery, but it's very possible that in your lifetime we will make that discovery. And I think that it will be the most exceptional piece of knowledge, I think it would be the most exciting discovery in all of our history. I mean, to confirm that we are not alone. I mean, think of the things that we'll learn, and think of the things that, it will confirm for us. So I'm excited about it. I mean, I think I just, if it happens in my lifetime, that would be fantastic. But we'll just have to wait and see. Maybe one of you will be the ones that make the breakthrough. And that would be just exhilarating.
So what about the whole idea of religion is so comforting because it can help explain what happens when you die, and the whole concept of heaven, and helping all of us cope with a death of a loved one. So a non-religious person, what would you say about what happens when you die? Is that it?
Well, again, I don't know, and none of you know either. I mean, that is one of the mysteries. I mean, poems and stories have been written about this from time immemorial. I mean, it's something that we struggle with as a species. It's something that we struggle with as a philosophy. I personally think that death does bring the end to our physical existence. But I do believe that I will live on for just as long as I have to live on. I mean, the compassion, the knowledge, the understanding that I have passed on to my children, the influence that I have had on the lives of others, that will live on for just as long as it needs to, but no more. The whole concept of heaven, I want you to think about something for just a moment. Heaven is often described as the most perfect place that you could imagine, and there are no wants and there are no needs. But imagine the most pleasurable thing that you could in life. Okay, let's imagine the second most pleasurable thing that you could. Maybe it's a grain of sugar on the palm of your hand, and you taste that sugar every day, and it's sweet and it's pleasurable. But if you were in heaven, if you existed for all of eternity, how much sugar would you have to ingest? You would have to ingest an infinite amount of sugar. Think about what that means. An infinite amount of anything would turn into a hell eventually. What would you do forever? I mean, what would be left to discover? I mean, it would be so monotonous and so I don't know how you could not go insane in a situation like that. So everything that is important, everything that means something is transient. It is temporary. That is why we have assigned so much importance to it. That is why it is so difficult when we lose our loved ones. It is so painful and we feel a sense of loss. If we never felt that, if we never had to experience that challenge and have to deal with that, I think that it would diminish us. So be careful for what you wish for, because it probably has consequences that you haven't considered. It is the way that it is. We are born and we die. And that may not be such a bad thing. It gives us a chance. And that's why it is so important not to take that chance for granted and to squander it on things that don't enhance your life and don't enhance your possibilities. So just give that a little bit of thought. I am afraid to die, just like all of you. But I am not afraid to be dead. I think it was Epicurus, a Roman philosopher, who said, if death is, I am not. If I am, death is not. Why should I fear that which cannot exist while I do?
So you've talked a little bit about how you address the afterlife or what happens after you die. But often religion comforts the here and now. It serves that purpose for many religious people. So just in light of the current political climate today, what is your take on the recent events in our country? How do you handle that without being a religious man?
Well, I probably handle it very similar to all the rest of us. I mean, I have to take in what our politicians and what our leaders say, and I have to evaluate their ideas and their policies just as much as anyone else does. And hopefully, I can make honest determinations on the good ideas and the not so good ideas. And make no mistake, our history is littered with some very, very bad ideas. I mean, we have to have open minds. An open mind is a good thing, but not so open that our brains fall out. There does come a point where we have to put our foot down and we have to realize that this policy or this direction, political or otherwise, is not going to enhance the quality of our lives. It is not going to provide as much individual freedom as possible while taking into account, the greater good for all of us. I mean, those are difficult things to balance. They were difficult in the past, they're difficult now, and they will continue to be difficult in the future. So, commenting on the current political situation, I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we just had a very contentious election. I mean, certainly in my lifetime, it is the most divisive political environment that I have ever experienced. But I'm optimistic. We're going to get through this. I mean, you guys, as part of the next generation, you're going to live your entire lives with having this happened, pretty early on in your adult lives. And so this will do much to shape how you see the world going forward. And I think for the most part, that's going to be a good thing. You're going to be able to balance the future decisions that are going to have to be made, based on the situation, that you experienced while in high school. And I think that's going to give you some knowledge and some insight that my generation and the generations that came before me, even though the lessons were certainly there for us from history, we tend to forget those things. But I think you guys, it's going to be fresh in your minds, and I think that we're going to be okay. You have many challenges in front of you. I mean, we have the political instability around the world, which is nothing new. We have the new challenges of technology that have to be taken into account. How much privacy are we going to be allotted, and how much intrusion are we going to allow into our, private lives, to give us security? And those are not easy questions that you're going to have to deal with. And then, can we recognize, bad leadership, and can we recognize those that do not act in our best interest? Again, these are things that, that have always been difficult. But you guys, in a way, you have a leg up because you've seen the best and the worst of both sides. I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said, you can fool all of the people some of the time, and some of the people all of the time. But you cannot fool all of the people all of the time. A bad idea, a bad policy is just bad. And we cannot be afraid to change directions, and we cannot be afraid to change our minds and go into a different direction when we recognize that these things have occurred. The challenges that you guys are going to have when it comes to energy and the challenges in the environment that you have. I mean, these are not going to be easy things, but we have an opportunity to make a heck of a difference. You guys have an opportunity to make a heck of a difference. And I need you all to study hard because I'm getting older, and I'm going to need all of you that become doctors and technicians to take good care of me. So please study hard.
So what does a non-religious free thought person think about sex, drugs, tattoos, rock and roll, and rap music?
Oh, the hip hop music. Oh my gosh. It's the death of society. You guys, you can't know. That's what every generation says about the next generation. I mean, the rock and roll and the hip hop of today was, the flappers and the 20s, music from long ago. Believe me, they said that in Victorian times. They said it at the time of the Roman times. There's always been that generational gap. The one thing that I don't understand, and you guys, would forgive me, I just don't understand tattoos. Something that's so permanent and unchangeable. I mean, you really don't give yourself the opportunity to change your mind on that one. So, the music I get, the tattoos I don't get that one. But that's me. That's a big thing. It's all good as long as it's a personal decision and you think you know what you're doing anyway. Sex. That's been around a while too. I don't know if you guys realize that or not, but it's a wonderful thing, obviously, but it has been used in the past, to oppress people, to shame people. And look, take my word for it. If you don't feel comfortable, if you wait, you can't go wrong by waiting until you're certain that you're ready. Don't let anybody talk you into it or pressure you into otherwise. On the other hand, if that doesn't work out for you, don't let anybody tell you that you're somehow compromised or that you're no longer pure or whatever those terms are, because none of that is true either. You are just fine, and you wait for as long as you want to, but don't let anybody tell you that that you're compromised or that you're unworthy, because that definitely is not true either. And then, so these generational things are always going to be different. And I made it. My parents made it. Our grandparents did just fine. Our great grandparents. So we all deal with these things. And you have the, I guess it's a blessing as well as a curse. You have so much information at your fingertips now. I mean, what you can pull up on your phone and look up in seconds, it would take my generation, days to get that information. And our great-great-grandparents' generation, they never had access to that kind of information. And when they did, it was most likely wrong or it was misleading. So, but that also comes with quite the responsibility, because you don't have an excuse for not having the information available to you. So the sex, drugs, rock and roll, and tattoos, I mean, we've always had those things. Maybe not precisely, in the format that it is today, but those things have always been part of every generation that has existed. And you do the best you can, and it's going to be all right.
So Stephen, in your introduction, you call yourself an atheist. So you don't believe in God, you're not a religious person. But hasn't religion been good for society? It's helped people. Hasn't religion been important and helped people better their lives?
Well, obviously that's a mixed bag. It has been important to people, and it will continue to be important to people for the foreseeable future. But it does come, with some baggage associated with it. There was a time when science and knowledge had to answer to religion. Lately, religion has much more had to answer to the science and to the discoveries that we have made. So that is a big change. Has it been overall good for society? Man, it has maybe been necessary, but I don't know if I would use the word good. It's the way that we were built together. It definitely, folded into our tribal instincts from the very beginning. Many stories were told, and those stories took on a life of their own early on, and later on people used those stories to, control other people. Sometimes they did it for good things and the betterment, and sometimes they did not. I mean, all you have to do is look at history, look at the divisions that we have had, going back as far as you want. In our particular society, Christianity dominates, and Christianity has been used to, well, first of all, Christianity, I mean, there is no single Christianity. I mean, if you want to break it down, I mean, you have the Protestants and you have the Catholics. And then under Protestantism, you have Baptists and Methodists and Episcopalians. And under Baptists, you have Reformed Baptists and Baptists of 1914. So you can see the divisions and, continue as you go dig down deeper and deeper. So there really is no such thing as any one religion, and there is no such thing as a consistent, understanding that people use to define their religion. It changes over time, just like everything else. And that's true not just of Christianity, it's true of all of the major religions across time and across the planet today. So it has brought people together, but it has also divided people significantly. And are we going to move past that going forward? Are we going to reject the divisions and the separation that it imposes? I mean, that's going to be a tough thing to do. I'm not the first atheist, and I won't be the last. And to be honest with you, those labels are difficult. There are many atheists out there that believe in things that, like ESP, extrasensory perception, or astrology, and I would differ greatly with them on those beliefs, because there simply is no evidence to support, that claim. And that's the big thing for me personally. David Hume said, "The wise man proportions his belief based on the quality of the evidence." And I don't see how you can go wrong. Suspend belief in something until you're able to evaluate the quality of the evidence for it. Religion has a pretty bad record when it comes to accounting for the evidence. I mean, there was a time when we thought that the earth was flat. There was a time when we thought that the earth was only 6,000 years old. There was a time when we thought that the heavens were just holes in the fabric that God had created. So all of these things they're understandable. And when I say that it shows our ignorance, I don't mean it as a judgment on the capacity for intelligence or smartness. That's not what it means. It means that we just didn't know enough back then to explain these phenomena and these occurrences in our world. And we have gained more and more understanding as we have gone on. And I don't think that religion has been the best partner, for the most part, to help us to take that information, to take that knowledge and better our lives and better our future. I think that, it takes some serious reflection and some serious, criticism to move past that. Even today, we reject so much simply based on the challenges of, that it has to our particular religious beliefs. I mean, if you had been born in India, do you think that you would have the particular religious beliefs that you have now? No, you would have been influenced by that culture that you would have been born into. And that shapes you far more than the validity of the claims of the religion itself. So please consider that as you move forward and as you evaluate, how important, and how truthful these things can be to you in your life ahead.
So you said religion is a mixed bag, but overall, hasn't religion made us better people, made society better? Does religion make you a better person?
Well, let's step back and take a look at this. So you would think that a highly religious person, where's the evidence that, that they're less prone to be in prison, that they're less prone to commit white-collar crime, they're less prone to be helpful to they're more prone to be helpful to their neighbors? I mean, yes, religious people can be very good people, but is it a result of the religion or is it a result of their humanity? And I say that it is far more a result of their humanity than it is of their religion or their religious beliefs. I mean, just look at the prisons. You would think that the prisons would be inundated with atheists for all manner of crimes, and that is just not true. You would think that, that all of the bad people in society would be the people outside of your particular religion, and that's not the case. You see good and bad across all religious sectors, across all beliefs. So that tells me that goodness is an inherent nature of our humanity. But to be fair, our less desirable behavior is also a result of our humanity. And we don't overcome that by appealing to a supernatural being or a supernatural belief. We overcome that by understanding that some of us in society, have chemical dependencies, and that affects their behavior. They have mental health issues, that also affects their behaviors. The way that they are raised, the way that their particular society or their culture has shaped the way that they see the world affects them every bit as much as any religious belief or non-religious belief. Almost every advance that we have made, whether it's doing away with slavery or allowing us to be divided by xenophobia, the fear of foreigners, all of those things we've had to overcome, not because of our religious beliefs, but in spite of them. And that should tell you much right then and right there. There is as much corruption in religion as there is in any other sector of life. And there are as many good and wonderful, helpful people in religion as there are in all the other sectors of society. And that there should tell you that religion is far more of a hindrance than it is a help in overcoming those challenges that we need to take on in order to build that better society.
We're coming up to the end of the allotted time. Is there anything else you'd like to share or summarize?
Well, obviously this is a very complicated and involved subject matter, and we've only touched on the surface of it. And I would suspect that many of you there in the classroom have questions that popped into your head, and I probably didn't even come close to answering, some of the interests and concerns that you had. So if it's permittable, I put my contact information, in the YouTube description. If you are interested and you send me an email, I promise you that I will answer each and every one of your inquiries, and I'll do my honest, truthful best to give you my take on all of this. You're going to hear from other people, Christians, I believe, Jewish perspective, a Muslim perspective, Buddhist perspective. And I encourage you to listen very carefully to what they have to say, because what they have to say is important. It's every bit as important as what I have to say, because, that I think is a responsibility to each and every one of us, is that we don't have an obligation to agree, But I do think we have an obligation and a responsibility to at least be respectful and listen to what each of us has to say. I mean, we're all going, through this together, and just be appreciative of the time you have with those that you love and appreciate, and also the ones that challenge you to think, differently, or think outside of the box that you have. And a good exercise, just for 90 seconds possibly, assume that there is no God, and what does that really change? I mean, would you love your parents any less? Would you appreciate your friends less? That flutter that you feel in your heart when you walk past that person in the hall that you haven't told them how you feel, but you're certainly going to. Would that be any less invigorating to you? I mean, would ice cream not be as sweet and tasty, or whatever it is that you enjoy in life? Would it be less important to you? No, I don't think any of those things that are precious and wonderful and beautiful would change whatsoever. I think you would still find joy and comfort in all of those things if there was or was not a God. So keep that in mind as you go forward. And again, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys. And I appreciate my wife being, meet my wonderful best friend of 35 years.
Hi.
And this whole time, we've had our dogs. So that's Russell. And he wants to go on a WALK.
You want to go for a walk?
Yeah, he'll go nuts. And then that is our sweet Shuggy.
Okay.
Take care, and don't hesitate to ask questions. And I'd be more than delighted to answer each and every inquiry that you might have.